What's up, family barbecue? It is your man, AimHigh. Welcome back, my bobas, to another episode of the AimHigh Podcast, and I am joined by a very special guest. You YouTubers see him on the screen. Listeners, I'm not trying to spoil anything for you, but it is a pristine guest on today's show. I'm actually super excited. Maybe I know I say this for every guest, but I actually mean it this time. I'm very excited to talk to this man because me and him share a similar passion. This dude is probably the best NBA YouTuber on the platform. He is an absolute goated individual. He does nothing but take W's. Please give a warm welcome, family barbecue, to the legend of winning.
Hey man, crazy introduction. But yo man, thanks for having me on. It's the one and only legend of winning, aka Low.
Yes, sir.
And man, yeah, I'm happy. I'm on our podcast, man. Thanks for having me.
I just appreciate you coming on, man. For a lot of reasons, bro. Because I feel like since and you kind of know this, moved down here to Atlanta on kind of a spur of the moment. Really just. I knew Waleed a little bit, but really, obviously, playing games all day with Agent, that was my connect. And to come to Atlanta and just be you and Waleed and everybody here has just kind of embraced me, bro, and just been so cool. And I just really appreciate it, bro. So it means a lot to me when you do things like this for me and try to come on the pod and help me out. I just really genuinely, I hope you understand, that means a lot to me. So I'm really excited to have you on, man. I'm pumped. Dude, for anybody that doesn't know, Low is probably one of the best NBA YouTubers on right now. You kind of make videos pretty much just on anything NBA. Can you just walk us through just your normal videos, kind of how you started YouTube, got into this industry?
Yeah. So I started a while back, similar to a lot of other content creators in my space, playing 2K first, and then it kind of just manifested into NBA content. Specifically, I started off with the NBA 2016 NBA Finals. It kind of just gave my take on what happened there. I guess consider a hot take, and then I kind of just manifested to an ongoing stream of content that I've been producing on my channel for now going on 5 years at this point. So yeah.
Wow. And then are you still playing 2K on any type of channels, or have you just transitioned completely over to the NBA side of things?
More or less, yeah. It's just been NBA. I don't really play 2K even in my free time anymore, to be honest with you. But if I were to play 2K, more than likely,
I don't know a lot of people that do.
Exactly. But if I were to play 2K, it would probably be more so in terms of like streaming and stuff like that. But like playing 2K, recording the content, uploading it, no, I haven't done it in years, to be honest with you.
And have you been streaming? I know you were streaming there for a little bit. Have you been streaming at all lately?
To be honest with you, no, but I'm thinking about, because we just started another channel, Agent and I'm probably gonna turn my second channel to like a stream clips, like highlight clips and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of more than likely what the plan is going to end up being.
Wow, that's awesome. Because I feel like you are, not to gaslight you here, but I mean, just genuinely, you're very entertaining. So to me, it feels like a lose-lose if you're not streaming. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're not like capitalizing on that potential, not only just revenue, but just connection with your audience. You know what I'm saying?
Of course. I get that. You know, I understand. I'm naturally entertaining. It's just a part of who I am.
Oozes out, bro.
Yeah. It's just something that comes with the brand.
Some might say maybe you're more entertaining than your fellow playback channel hosts. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, not some people. I would argue probably majority would say that. Yeah, majority would say I'm a bit more entertaining, of course.
Yeah, walk us through how that relationship got started between you and Agent. Have you guys always been friends? I guess I'm not really familiar with you guys, your guys' past and stuff like that. How you guys got so close and stuff.
I've probably known Agent now for 6, maybe 7 years.
Wow.
So it started off with me just being a viewer, but before I started 2K content, I was uploading hip hop content, like before it became a thing to upload news on hip hop and stuff like that. And then that kind of fell off, and I was kind of just looking for a space to be active in.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was really into basketball. And Agent had a basketball podcast called the AO Podcast, and I was just viewing it frequently, and I would kind of hop in there and kind of listen to what they had to say. One of the episodes, they were looking for someone who was a designer to give them a thumbnail, and at the time, I wasn't familiar with anything. I think I just went online, downloaded GIMP, and then pieced together a thumbnail for them, gave it to them, and to I guess to thank me, they put me on an episode of their podcast, and then from there, that turned into me being a reoccurring cast member on the podcast because
Mm-hmm.
between Agent and I and maybe another member, we were really the only three who were actively talking. Even though it was like 7 people in that podcast, it was ridiculous.
Whoa.
And
What?
then yeah, it was a ridiculous. It started off as like 5 people, and then we just kept adding people on as like
Jeez.
guests, and just having an all out battle between like just trying to have a conversation about basketball.
Yeah.
So it turned into that, and then we kind of then just pivot that into like me and him communicating more about YouTube specifically. And when it comes to him pivoting his channel outside of Waleed, I don't know if there was anybody else he was probably communicating with more frequently than me at that time. And
Yeah.
honestly, it might not even be Waleed because I don't know if Waleed was editing for him at that time. So that's how me and his relationship really grew in those regards.
You mentioned the hip hop. I did not know that. I did not know that you had background in doing a hip hop channel or anything like that. I feel I'm getting to learn about Low right now. I'm very excited. I'm very excited.
Not that many people know that though. Like
Yeah.
that is something that I don't really share too much. It's just like a portion of my YouTube career that was very very short, so
Yeah.
I normally don't say it.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's still interesting though. Are you still a pretty big fan of hip hop, or is your passion pretty much just NBA strictly? I think it's funny, and I say that question, and as I say it, I'm like, that's kind of a dumb question because it's like I feel like so many people online, and I see this with Agent, but I see this with a lot of other people too. Is it's like whatever you're doing online, that's it, dude. That's all you can like. You're only an NBA. You're only interested in NBA content. You don't like anything else. Agent only plays 2K. That's all he can play. That's all he
Yeah.
ever plays. So I mean, I'm sure you're interested in a lot of other things, but do you still actively pursue like keeping up with news in hip hop or anything like that?
No, not as much as I used to. It was definitely more of a passion project because when I first got out of high school, that's what I wanted to be. Like I wanted to be a rapper. So
Yeah.
that was just something I was following at the time. I even I have a video that's up on YouTube that I recorded. So that was just something that I personally like to do, which was be a part of hip hop and stuff like that. But I don't do it nowhere near as much as I used to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
for especially like, for the better part of the last 5 years, it's been way more just basketball, the NBA more so than anything else. However,
I
I do want to dabble back into it in this upcoming year. That's kind of
Yeah.
like part of the focus.
Listen, I'm family barbecue. I'm about to drop a gem right now, and no one really knows this. But I definitely have some professionally recorded songs of me and a rap group out there that I was in high school called Mother Crow. So listen, Lo, you're not the only one with bars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I'm just gonna let you
I feel
know.
like I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel like everybody at some point has tried
They
to
did
like
that, didn't
put out
they?
a song.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I feel like that's something like if you're a creative, there is at one point in your life where you
Something.
attempted to sing, rap, poetry, because it's like the go-to thing to try to find your voice.
Yeah.
And then with like YouTube and streaming, that's like open up a whole nother lane. And so that's what I think a lot of us have kind of like capitalized on.
I think for me, it was like I don't know what, and that's an interesting question, I guess, and I guess it would be hip hop, I guess. For me, what really sparked my creative gene, I don't know if you could point directly to hip hop, which, really sparked you, but for me, it was drums. I used to play drums a lot, and I was in a couple bands in high school, and then when I wasn't in those bands, that's kind of what happened, is it was just kind of like I needed some outlet, something to just get my creative juices flowing. And I just started writing. I just started writing verses and bars down, and I really didn't think much of it. And then this girl who was in my high school was like really, really, like still is really talented at singing. And she was like, well, I want to get on like some hooks or something. And We ended up doing I forget what the recording software that we used was, but it was really bad. It was a really bad recording. And we used I'm not kidding you, we plugged in a USB Guitar Hero microphone into the computer and used that as our first recording, and then eventually got to know a friend he had some like really good Logitech recording equipment, like was really into like beats and creating beats. So this guy wrote us all the like 5 beats and recorded us, and it's pretty cool. We still have them on our like Facebook and stuff. But on a scale from 1 to 10, Lo, rate our group name. Our group name was Mother Crow. It's got to be at least.
It's like a 7 or 8.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I was gonna give it a 6, but you know.
No. It's like identifiable. You can remember it, but it obviously some room to grow.
Some room to grow. Dude, I'm really excited to have you on, mainly because you're a great NBA mind. You know, you pay attention a lot to basketball, and you do a lot of deep research in it as well. Kind of, what got you? I always find it interesting for people who get into sports, and what really got you into NBA? What got you really excited about the NBA? Because it takes a lot of you know, it's got to be some type of passion for you to continue to upload the NBA, right? I mean, like, you just can't you can only fake it so much. You know what I mean? Like, you obviously love basketball. So what was that? What got you started in doing this?
I just think the community with people who create content with basketball, or just the community in general, you don't have to create content. I think that it's such an interesting community, and it's so many different perspectives, and there's so many different ways to view something that happened. I always find it so interesting where you can like watch like First Take or one of those debate shows.
Yeah.
And there is a final score and a game happened, and it's like what happened. It's not like what you saw is what you saw. And yet people can come to the table with like 2 different perspectives. Like that is like the most interesting thing to me in the world.
Yeah.
And so me in general, my love for basketball just came from me playing it. When I grew up, I was playing when I was really young. I played a lot of soccer. Then that transitioned to me playing.
I just want to really quick say, everyone had a soccer phase as well. And I don't know why that is. But dude, people who grew up in the 90s, everybody at least played 1 season of soccer. And I don't know why.
But you know what's so crazy? I played more seasons of soccer than any other sport combined. Like
really?
I played if we're talking about seasons, I've probably played over a dozen.
Wow.
Like we were like legit playing soccer. Me and my brother was playing soccer for a really good time, a really good long time. And then that transitioned into football, and then finally basketball. And my problems with both soccer and football is that you had to take on very, very, very specific roles in those games. And I think that was my huge problem. Looking back at it now, it is a very selfish way to view it, but I didn't like being a defender or a goalie in soccer, because it's like there's literally only so much that I could do.
Yeah.
When it came to football, I didn't like being a lineman or a defensive end, because there's only so much that I could do. But when I played basketball, I remember me vividly hitting a game winner, because we had a guy who was on the team, ball handler, dominated, scored the most points. But I vividly remember me setting a screen, pick and roll, me rolling to the basket, catching a ball, making a layup, and winning the game for us. Wow. And so that was the first time I realized, like, as in basketball, it doesn't matter what you can do. No matter what position you are, you should be expected to pass, score, dribble, rebound, all those things. And I think that was what really drew me to the sport. And then obviously it's not like I'm going to grow any taller. So once I accepted the fact that, like, me as a basketball player was going to be stunted by my like genetics.
Yeah.
So at that point it was like, all right, I'm just going to get more involved on the back end. I just enjoy watching the sport itself.
It's very interesting because that is true. I feel like there's nothing quite like seeing a player take over a game in basketball.
Yeah.
Somebody like it happens too in soccer and football and hockey and every other sport, right? But
yeah,
it's different when it's like you realize, like you said, like those other sports And it's even interesting that you name the positions that you named in those sports, because those are also like very highly dependent team sports, and the positions that you named are very team dependent positions.
You know, so I wish somebody would have told me that before, because when I was playing offensive lineman, I didn't realize like
yeah,
when I was playing, and I played for
your work
two different
genuinely
organizations.
goes unnoticed a lot of the time.
But if you know the sport of football, you know for a fact that
They're
offensive lineman is like easily the most important, or one of the important. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know they got paid the most until I got older, and I was like, oh, okay, well that's
Fuck.
interesting to now know. Yeah, I was like, oh, that's interesting to know.
Yeah.
But no one ever explained it to you, or like to me when I was playing.
Yeah, which is I think a lot of I don't know what it is like now, obviously, because me and you are so far removed from that part of our life. But I know growing up as a kid, it was very much the same as just in anything in school. Like I felt like, looking back, not a lot of people told us things that they probably should have told us about anything. But sports, 100%. So it is interesting that you say that, because I do love the aspect of seeing dominant players at every other sport. But yeah, there's something different about basketball that when I watch basketball, I think I fell in love with basketball. Obviously, you know, one of my little brothers, he's not biologically my brother, but we just grew up on the same block and just did everything together. And he was really good. He ended up playing football at Oklahoma State. But was really good at basketball, but just decided that, you know, he probably wasn't going to get a D1 offer in basketball. And he needed a scholarship to play, or to not, he needed a scholarship to go to school to begin with. So it was kind of one of those things where he just had to make a decision to play football. But us growing up playing basketball together, man, we were watching Kobe, we were watching the Celtics, and that really, I don't know, just kind of like, my brother grew up watching Michael Jordan, right? And to me, like, my Michael Jordan was Kobe, and Kobe made me really fall in love with the game. And then, you know, fast forward to teen years, and I get to watch, you know, I'm very categorized as a LeBron hater. I'm really not. I just really liked watching Carmelo Anthony play more than I liked watching LeBron play. But I think that's because I liked the offensive side of basketball, and LeBron was just more. He was more. You could tell he's just more than that, and he could do offensive things. But he just, you know, he passed the ball a lot more than Melo, and I just thought it was cool that Melo he'd pull up for anyone. It's not a shot Melo didn't pull up for that he didn't like. You know what I mean? Like, and I love that. I just love that attitude about things. Very much why I love watching Kevin Durant play now. But I want to know specifically as we get into basketball here, because this is where probably the majority of the pod is going to be spent, because I just have so many questions. Who are your favorite players, man? Just not who the best are, but who are your favorite players? And you don't have to, you can name as many as you want or as less as you want, but just, I would want to know just bias of you know, who the best or who the greatest, or just personally, like, who are your favorite players to watch growing up, and who are your favorite players now?
I grew up a Kobe fan as well, so Kobe is my favorite player. I'm also a Laker fan, so that also kind of correlates with that. The player like that I first identified with and like really, really got me into basketball was Chris Webber. Chris Webber, their whole Sacramento Kings team. I love that. I love that team.
Yeah.
And another reason why is just because when I was playing basketball, I identified with the idea of like you can do everything. Like it doesn't matter what position you are. And C Webb was a power forward who could bring the ball up. He handled the ball. He had a face-up game. He can back down, rebound, passes, like all those things C Webb could do. So I really enjoyed him. Obviously, this is around the same time of Iverson and Vince Carter. So when I was growing up, I enjoyed them as well. As I continue to get older, I don't mind LeBron, but I wouldn't say he's like. When I was growing up, he wasn't like one of my favorites. Like right now, he's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
The past like 5 years, he has been. But like when I was growing up throughout the early, mid to late 2000s, he wasn't. I gravitated more so to like D Wade and Chris Paul than LeBron. And then as I got into the late 2000s, entering the early 2010s, obviously Pau Gasol. Even though they were like rivals, or they weren't like they were in the same conference. I didn't like I despised Dirk and Jason Terry. But as I grew older, like I was
Yeah.
like, I could like legitimately respect what they brought to the table, type shit. Like I was like, oh man, like that is like what they're doing. I hate it because it could prevent my team from winning. But
Yeah.
I like started to really just relate to what they were doing. And then obviously, like any player who ever played for the Lakers, I thoroughly enjoy Pau Gasol, Lamar Odom, and Derek Fisher. But like for the most part, that was it. And then as of right now, obviously LeBron, obviously Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, um, but the handful of players I can just like sit there and watch them play. Man, I could just watch Steph Curry play for like hours and hours.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and I can watch. I wish there were more defensive players in the league because I miss that aspect. Like
I do too.
yeah, I wish it was just more defensive oriented because like that aspect of basketball, I didn't really understood. I missed until like it was gone. But Jimmy Butler is another like great example of
Yeah.
like someone I thoroughly just I can just watch him play. It doesn't matter what team he's on, which he's bounced around from team to team over the past couple of years. I'll just root for him because I genuinely like to watch him play and give effort on that side of the ball. And then Kyrie, I like thoroughly just I
Poetry
can
in
sit
motion,
there.
dude.
Yeah,
Jesus.
I can just sit there and watch Kyrie
Yeah.
offensively just go to work for like hours at a time.
Um, is there anybody in the league right now, that you would say, I guess on the on besides, because here's the thing, right? I think about the players that we kind of name, and you know, I talk about Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. You even talk about Chris Webber. There's just players that I feel like they get mentioned more than other players as history kind of, you know, writes itself. Are there any players right now entering the league? I can think of one probably like Luka. Luka Doncic is an easy one to kind of say. History's probably going to be kind to him when his playing career is over. Is there anyone else like maybe under the radar that you would say is going to be in that mention as far as Kobe, Michael, LeBron, Kevin, Kawhi, Luka for me is probably. Is there anyone else in this league that is going to maybe have a shot to be one of those names?
Um, yeah, Luca's definitely one of them. Um, I would like to say Giannis. I would believe
Yeah.
Giannis will hopefully be one of them as well. Um, and then probably after that Zion.
Oof.
And the only reason why I would say those three is because I think the way that the league is also setting things up for them to be that those type of players is kind of aiding them in that progress as well.
Yeah.
Like I love Tim Duncan. I'm not saying that I don't love him. I know I didn't mention his name in all the players that I listed off, but the league never like positioned themselves to like promote Tim Duncan to the same extent that they promoted a lot of other players, and this for
True.
several different reasons, right?
Yeah.
So like historically speaking, a lot of people, especially younger fans, it just doesn't serve him well. So a player like hopefully Anthony Davis doesn't. I don't think Anthony Davis is gonna get treated like that. Like I think Jokic might get treated like that,
Yes.
where like no one is not going to speak enough about Jokic to where 20 years from now people may thoroughly understand how good he was and he's actually a really remarkable player. But I think like Duncan and Dirk are like two great examples of that, where over time people have their own perspective on them, and it's just because the mythology of those two players aren't like expanded to the extent of other great players. So um, but Zion already has like the force of the NBA being
Yeah.
pushed behind
They
him.
really like him.
Yeah, it's already been pushed. So that's the reason why I think, even though I don't think that Zion, like skill wise, maybe where other players are at, he's just going to get pushed to that point just because of the team he's on and the push from the NBA he's already received. So Zion and Luca for sure. Giannis maybe not, but Zion and Luca for sure.
I don't know what is. I think to me at least, it's very difficult to see some of the, um, I don't know, just like the not lack, because I know that they work on it, but from the outside looking in, I look at like developing your game, and I look at Giannis and I just go, man, like, why? Or like I look at Ben Simmons and I just go like what is like why is there so much difficulty in creating a jump shot that flows and that is easy to just not that you have to, like, I don't know, not that you have to, like, make every single shot you take or you have to shoot 40 or whatever, but, like, dude, there's shots, and Giannis got better, I think, last year. I think he did take a pretty decent step, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But, like, with those two players specifically, like, you have to at least, I think the biggest problem with Ben was, like, he didn't even attempt shots. So, you know what I mean? So it's like you didn't even have to worry about him at all. Why is it so difficult for those players to progress that skill trait of just being able to get a halfway decent shot up to at least pose a threat in that category so that they can be, because it's gonna serve them better, right? I mean, if you have a shot, someone like Ben Simmons and Giannis who are so good at getting to the rim, drawing fouls, doing their things, creating openings for their teammates, they would be so much better if they could just get a shot. I just don't. Sometimes I look at that from the outside looking in, and I just don't get it. I'm like, why? Why is this taking so long for them to develop?
Well, I think with Giannis is a bit different because when he came into the league, it wasn't as if like anything was there to begin with. Like who Giannis was in the beginning, it was a lot of, well, we may have to mold him to be a certain type of a player. And I think he just adapted to the situation that he was given to at that time. So whatever they needed out of him is what they were going to get. Like I don't think anyone expected him to be like a ball handler like he is right now. The defensive end, I don't think no one was expecting that. And the way he can just make his way, the footwork that he can make his way into the lane, those are all things I don't think no one was expecting. So they were just molding him to whatever they could make him, and it just so happened to be what he is right now. So I think that's the problem with Giannis. With Simmons, I genuinely don't understand because it's like it's so obvious that you have to shoot. We knew you couldn't shoot before you entered the league. Like everybody knew that was your weakness.
Yeah.
We're now at a point where it's like,
what year is this for him?
Year 4,
which to me is just ridiculous.
And I don't even know if that even considers like the year that he sat out too.
Oh wow, yeah.
So yeah, this is year 4, not including the year he sat out. So yes.
So that's 5 years of possible development, and we're still not really even close to him having a decent jump shot.
But it could be like a mentality thing. It could be like some people have like hitches and stuff like that. Like there's been multiple examples throughout NBA history where just the motion of the repetitive motion of how you shoot one way, it kind of just forms this hitch and like psychologically.
But even haven't we seen like, Lonzo, right? I mean, Lonzo's shot used to be dog. It's not the best, but it's fixable now. Like he's making a consistent effort to change his jump shot somewhat, and listening to the coaches, you can see the development of his jump shot. I think Markelle Fultz is another one. Markelle Fultz was garbage, and he's making an effort to try to change his shot and put in the work. And I think if anyone has an excuse to be psychologically worn, it's Markelle Fultz. Yeah. So I don't know.
I don't with Lonzo. I don't think Lonzo mentally was ever in a space of like, this is who I am as a player, scoring wise. So this is just who I am. Like he was never breeded into that. Like Ben Simmons, even in college, was like someone who had to give you 15 or 20 points on a night-to-night basis. Lonzo has always been like a pass first, pass second, pass third type of a player. Like he's just always pass.
Yeah.
And then by nature, he comes across as a player as, and anywhere else y'all need me to do, I'm just willing to adapt to just do whatever I need to do to kind of help us win. So trying to mold him into the type of player you may need may be a bit more easier because he may be more willing to do so. Ben Simmons comes across as someone that just is that type of person where like, this is me, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And it's hard to kind of take him off that. But I will say this, I don't like this aspect of like dialogue between players. I genuinely don't like doing this because to be honest with you, I don't know who Ben Simmons is. So I don't know why he doesn't like that. Making the arguments of like, what's he going through psychologically is kind of hard. I'm just basing off of like what other players have said throughout history of the sport. that psychologically is really hard to overcome certain aspects of your career when you've been doing it for years and years and years. But the truth is, I don't know. Um,
I guess none of
but
us know but Ben.
yeah, but also on the flip side, I'm also the belief of like I don't think you have to shoot to be dominant in the league. I just think that there's other ways to be effective, even when you're not having the ball in your hand. If you can't shoot, I just think the problem with Ben is that he hasn't identified that yet, and I also believe the part of the Sixers is that they haven't put him in situations to be active without the ball in his hand. So I think that's the other problem.
Speaking with the 76ers, I mean, I would assume that Joel Embiid is probably a big problem for Ben in that offense that they run. Is it a is there a way that you're leaning if you were the GM of the 76ers on who you would move on from, or would you try to make it work with both of them, or what's your outlook on that team and how they can get better? Because to me, I look at it and I say, okay, um, I think I would probably choose Ben Simmons, but the only reason for that being that I'm not in a league that is so driven by their star players and star player availability. For me, it would be very hard to ignore the injury concerns of both players, but specifically, I feel like Embiid is probably more likely to succumb to that injury, and like, I mean, that's really a betting game when it boils down to it. You're kind of going, okay, I don't really know, but it's one of those things where I just think that I've seen more work with the type of player that Ben is versus in the league see the type of player that Embiid is. And not that Embiid is not good, because Embiid's probably the best center in the league, but just what are your thoughts on that situation?
I think I mean if I had to pick between the two, it would definitely be a lot more like I don't know because I feel like when people make these arguments about like Embiid and Simmons, I think they don't. I think people overstate both angles. Like Embiid has played like 63, 64 games each season. I want to say he's played like nearly 75% of the regular season every year that he has played, like when he's been available outside his rookie season. So I would argue that he's actually been exceeding expectations in terms of his health wise. And in terms of Simmons, for someone who cannot shoot, like legitimately cannot shoot, to be as great as he is, which I believe is like an all NBA caliber player as a guard in today's league, and be arguably defensively the best all NBA caliber guard as well. Like even in those regards, I think people still overstate their quote unquote lack of productivity. But I the thing with Simmons is that like if the peak of what Simmons does is essentially what Giannis is doing right now, then it's like the ceiling is so obvious that it's really hard to like overcome that. Like right, like
Yeah.
regardless of how great Giannis is, and like he's extremely great, like 2-time MVP caliber great, defensive player of the year caliber great. Even he still struggles to make any consistent strides throughout a postseason run because of his inabilities, and I don't think it's as worse as Simmons is.
It's not his team.
Why? I mean, it could also be I think both of them deal with like their team and their structures and things like that. But I mean, hypothetically speaking, even if we were to put the perfect team around Giannis, there's still certain aspects of the game that you can just manipulate Giannis in. Whereas with Embiid, if the only knock on Embiid right now is his health, which I'm not saying that's not a massive knock, I would argue that it might not be enough of a knock for me not to pick Embiid over Simmons right now. Like to be honest with you, because if defensively Embiid is above average as a center, which I believe he is, and offensively you like there's like literally no player in the league that I believe that can stop Embiid within a 7-game series when he's healthy, then at that point it's like, okay, what are we discussing at that point? So, but if
Hmm.
the reality is that Embiid's nature and the way that he performs, it just doesn't contribute to winning basketball unless he's healthy. So if that's the major caveat, then I can see that's a problem. But personally, I'm more prone to lean more into Embiid, largely because the makeup of their roster, and I say that mainly because Tobias Harris is there. The makeup of their roster is already conducive of a team that features Joel Embiid.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you just have Embiid on there, Tobias Harris, Seth Curry, and Danny Green, if you just need someone like Damian Lillard, that would immediately make that team, I would argue, the best in the Eastern Conference off rip.
With the addition of Damian.
Yeah, with the addition of Damian, like we switch Ben Simmons and Damian immediately.
Yeah.
But if we switch, we would have to switch Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid with a very unique center. Like
Yeah.
it would have to be almost like Anthony Davis. Like I don't know if you could replace Joel Embiid with Towns because defensively you would lose a lot at that point. Or I don't know, like that type of like I don't know if Brook Lopez produces enough offensively to replace Embiid. But there's enough ball handling guards out there to replace Simmons with someone else and to get a little bit more in return flexibility wise with your offense. So I would lean to more so towards Embiid because of that.
And I I'm not quite positive if obviously like you said if any of that would work or whatever, right? It's a betting game. No one it's very much hypotheticals. But do you think that they're going to move on from one of them by the end of the trade deadline, or do you think that we won't see that until they really are
No.
forced to make a decision?
Yeah, I think they're waiting out until they're forced. I just think they have to be forced. Like this, the start of the season now really proves like, oh man, maybe it was just the personnel, maybe it was just the coaching. They're having a great start to the season, which I've said this for years that I didn't think Brett Brown was the right coach for them. I've said that for years. So
Hmm.
maybe it was the personnel, maybe it was the coaching, which I think a lot of it was. And so now you have these pieces around them that fit better with both Embiid and Simmons. But again, I think the problem is that you get into this point of like you think that regular season success will justify some of these moves, but then we get into the playoffs. I think the problems are still going to be the same, which is sag off Embiid and then sag off Simmons and double Embiid or force Simmons a playoff ball. And it doesn't matter who's around him, you're going to play into the same cards over and over and over again. So
Yeah.
that would be my concern. But by the trading deadline, no, because I think that the Sixers are going to be one of the better teams in the regular season this year. So no, I don't think that's the case.
Before we move on to just Eastern Conference overall, are there any moves that you see being happening at the trade deadline for sure? Any players that you say for sure they're going to be in a different destination?
I guess James Harden. Like I would assume at that point, like with him playing well. Because I have a hard time believing that he's gonna go back at this point. Like I know that like they're playing fine right now, but I still think that the end result for Harden would be I want to play for another team, and I would assume Harden moving to another team would be the biggest move people are looking for. Also, I think because both conferences have like 10 teams believing that they can make the playoffs.
Yeah.
By the time we get to the trading deadline, reality is going to start setting in, and then like players are just going to be shipped off because it's like, oh well, it's very
We
clear we're
really
not going to
don't.
make it.
Yeah, we really
Yeah,
don't have that
so we're just going to
ability.
ship off some of our miscellaneous pieces to try to get something in return and prep us for next year. So that kind of thing.
Do you have any destination in mind for Harden?
If well, I was gonna say Philly, but if Philly continues to play well, then no, it wouldn't be the Sixers. Um, Probably the only other team that I feel like might utilize him correctly, but have the pieces to give up, would probably be a Brooklyn situation.
Hmm.
But with Spencer Dinwiddie now out, I don't even that becomes a bit more
He would have to
difficult.
be in that trade package, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he's hurt. He's on the last year of his contract potentially, so it's like there's a lot of things where I don't know how things will work out for the Rockets and what they're going to receive in
And
return.
Simmons, if I'm remembering correctly, Simmons was included in a deal that they did not take, correct?
Um, who didn't take Houston? It's a lot of it's been speculation. I don't know if
Okay.
there's any like hardcore
You
like
know, I
this is
see a
what
lot
we
of
have to
I
offer.
see a lot of like Twitter things, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, yeah.
and reportedly I thought that I saw something where there was multiple picks involved and Simmons was offered by the 76ers, and I don't know, from what I gathered, Houston was the ones that were not really trying to move on from Harden
Well, I
in
think from
that
that
specific
situation,
deal.
they were saying that Philly had to give them more picks, which again, I
Mm,
don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
because it honestly doesn't sound all that true. I would argue like if you're Houston and somebody said we're going to give you Simmons and even just one pick for James Harden, then I would pull the trigger on that because like that.
If
If you're
something
Houston, you're getting a lot.
something that I've been thinking about in that specific trade scenario, if Simmons goes to Houston, what happens to John Wall? Because that I feel like that's not a very great backcourt, Simmons and John Wall.
Well, I don't. I
Um,
don't think. I don't think long term Houston is that concerned about
about
John
John Wall?
Wall.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean like because if both of their peaks is at an All NBA caliber player, I'm getting one in Ben Simmons who performs at All NBA. That's younger and is
Younger,
a better
yeah.
defender than you. So like, why am I? I'm not gonna be so attached to John Wall where I'm like going to potentially miss out on acquiring a 24, 25-year-old All NBA player. Like,
I just love John Wall. John Wall is somebody that I really like watching. I'm never gonna argue that he's like, oh my God, the best point guard in the league or anything like that. But I've ever since Kentucky, just his athleticism, just raw talent. He's kind of struggled shooting the ball at times in his career, but doing a pretty decent job this year. I just love watching him play. And so I just hope the best for him. And it's kind of the same way with Boogie too. I just hope the best for Boogie because it's like I just love watching him play. And I felt like he always got a pretty shitty deal in Sacramento during his best years, really. And it's kind of sucked to see him get hurt. But moving on to the Eastern Conference, is there any do you see it shaking out any different way than what people have it? I know it's so dumb that people didn't think that the Nets were going to be. I saw a prediction that said the Nets were going to be like the 6th or 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. I just think that that's ridiculous. I mean, I think if Kevin Durant is even 70, 80% healthy, there's really not a lot that anyone can do when you put Kevin Durant on one side of the court and you put Kyrie on the other side of the court. There's like really nothing that teams can do. So I expect them to be a top 3 seed for sure, maybe even the 1 seed. I love Boston. I always love Boston though, but I don't know, dude. There's something about them in the playoffs and maybe that's just those two guys, Brown and Tatum, need to take a massive leap forward to I don't know, really show. And Tatum's done a lot of that in the playoffs, but it's never been quite enough. And I don't know if that's because of his team or not. I guess I haven't really paid close enough attention to that team. But moving on from Hayward and some of the other players that they've kind of, and I think Ainge has even said that he takes a lot of the blame for stacking that roster the way that he did. Which, I understand. The 3 seed, I don't really, from those top 2 teams on, and then you got Milwaukee. What is happening after those 3 teams? I know that we have, like we talked about, Philly. The Pacers are always kind of a team that ends up with a good record. What do you see? What do you see in that conference?
I would say, I mean, if we're saying the top 3 should be someone of Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Boston. Yeah, Philly should be in there. Indiana should be in there. Miami should clearly be in there as well. I guess the only ones that will be questionable, which are not also Philly, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's already 7. So Miami, Milwaukee, Boston, Brooklyn, Indiana, Atlanta, Philly. That's already 7. So then the
Atlanta's
question would
playing
be,
great, by the way, too. Holy.
Yeah, I would assume Atlanta would stay in the playoff race. Maybe not as high as they are right now, but at the end of the day, I said this before the season began. How many teams are like rushing or trying to compete for an 8th seed in the Eastern Conference? Which between Toronto, Washington, and Orlando, I'm assuming those are the 3 other ones, right?
Yeah.
And maybe Atlanta if they start to like slow down a bit. But that's really about it. The way that the play-in tournament is going to be set up this year is going to be a little bit more interesting at the end of the bracket, but I don't really see like those outside those 7: Philly, Indiana, Atlanta, Boston, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Miami. I don't really feel too confident about anyone else. And if I had to just pick someone to kind of round out the last 8th spot, I would say that possibly Washington or Toronto. I'm leaning before Orlando.
What do you make of their start, the Wizards? I mean, it seems that they're playing well and they're just not winning, but I don't really know. I guess
defensively they're horrible. Like last year,
I haven't really caught a game, to be honest with you. It's a lot of highlights and a lot of box score checking for me when it comes to the Wizards, but it seems on paper that they're just not able to win any games.
Well, like against Chicago, they put up 130 points. They just allowed they allowed 133. Like that, that's like stuff like that. Like against Orlando, they put up 113. They just allowed 120. Against Orlando again, they put up 120. They just allowed 130. So like defensively is like they're just god awful.
What is that? Because but to me, I think of just, even though Westbrook has never been a premier defender, he's never been garbage at defense. Like he's never been like somebody you're like, oh man, like the only time that he was really put in a weird spot was during those conference finals games against the Warriors. Where it just feeling like he was just a liability sometimes because of the things that the Warriors did. And I think that speaks more to the offense that they were running rather than Westbrook's downfall. But I just think that, too, it's like Bradley Beal's not really considered a terrible defender either. So
well, last year he was bad, but I think it was just because he didn't have anyone around him. I think he was
a one-man show out there.
But the crazy part about it is I think that team will be one of those teams where the only way they're going to beat teams is if offensively they're just better than everyone else. And they're like right now they're like I know it's only like a handful of games, but they're like one of the best 3-point shooting teams, and that's with Westbrook on the team, Bradley Beal shooting horrible as well, and Bertans having a really bad start. And it's just because Thomas Bryant and a bunch of other players are like actually shooting really, really good from three. So the problem is just going to be defense, and then you add on top of the fact that it's a bunch of young players and a bunch of new pieces playing alongside one another. They're just going to have a bad season playing defense, and the only way they're going to keep up is if they're able to stop the opposing team. But unfortunately, Westbrook is now in a situation where I don't think anyone is going to like give him any breaks, because ideally this is the type of team you would put around Westbrook, where it's a bunch of 3-point shooting. So I don't know if anyone's going to give him any breaks because of that. But yeah, defensively they're just bad. Like they're putting up great scoring numbers. They're top 10 in 3-point shooting. They're top 5 in field goal percentage. They're 4th in points per game. Like offensively, they're actually really fine. It's just that defensively they're also so god awful that it makes it like really hard to like even compete when you're allowing more points than you're actually scoring.
I know you've been really critical of Westbrook in the past, and just some of the things that he's done. What do you make of his legacy and the things that he's doing right now? I mean, even just the first 4 or 5 games putting up triple doubles. I mean, is that anything to you, or does that not mean really anything to you?
What does that mean? What does that mean? He puts up triple doubles. What does that mean?
I mean, to me, in the grand scheme of like history, like history is going to have to remember him fondly because of these triple doubles and him averaging triple doubles and him doing, because to me, it's like, I understand, like, I'll just be honest. I love NBA, and sometimes I love watching like history on the NBA, but to be honest with you, I don't think that I've seen, outside of like a couple clips here and there, I don't know if I've ever seen Oscar Robertson play a full game. I'm gonna be honest with you. But when I hear Oscar Robertson's name, I immediately think like that's one of the best players that the league has ever seen. Why? Because for the longest time, he was always regarded as the triple-double guy. Like, he was the dude who just did it all. You know what I mean? And then Westbrook comes along and just completely just changes that whole, I don't know, subcategory of just stats. And just a lot of people said that, you know, oh man, he's getting fed stats, like his teammates are letting him rebound or whatever. All these different things. Sure. All these different things were happening. But to me, it's like, are we saying that he's not directly helping his team when he's doing stuff like that, when he's creating these opportunities and hustling and doing those things? I'm not saying, again, that he is like the best point guard in the league, or he's the best point guard to ever play or I'm not saying anything like that. But what I'm saying is that he is probably when it's all said and done, a top 10 point guard to ever play the game. And he is probably, in my assumption, more helping his team than he's ever hurting his team. Not saying he's never hurt his team, because he has had some wild games, and me and you have even gone back together and
Yeah.
watched gameplay footage of him and really tried to break it down. But I guess if I'm a GM, I would always want Russell Westbrook on my team. Always.
I wouldn't say always.
Unless I could get like Steph Curry or something. But
I'm gonna say if I could have a better point guard, I wouldn't say always. Or if I had like a more reliable score, a more consistent and efficient score, then I wouldn't say always. My only gripe is, and I've said this numerous times before, it's like, what does that do? Like what does it do that instead of him finishing a night with 20 points, 10 assists, and 9 rebounds, he finished with 10 rebounds. So like what is that? What does that do for him? Like what does that do for the team? What was that 10th rebound actually impacting the team? How did that affect them? And if you go back in the original season where he won MVP and he first year he averaged triple double, a lot of those rebounds just didn't mean anything. Like there was actually no point to some of those rebounds. Like they just allowed him to grab a rebound, and in many of those cases, it didn't even transition into like easy points. So it's like you just got a rebound just because you just wanted a rebound. So in those regards, I always question that. But I also say for anyone out there who's worked a 9 to 5 or you are a manager, um, if I have a manager and he's overseeing or he has a bunch of employees under him or her, technically speaking, the manager could do all the things that the employers are doing, right?
yeah.
Like that's like because the more than likely the only way that they got that job is because they were able to be efficient in all of the jobs that they're being done under them. But does that actually make the employers better that he just does all the jobs? Or does
No.
it make it better or you make it more productive and better when you have somebody else do it? Like, sure, the job will get done, but is it not better if you as an employee have this being done by Jacob, this being done by Bobby, and this being done by Sarah, rather than you doing all three of those things? And so that's always been my justification with ball dominant guards like Westbrook who put up crazy numbers, especially assist numbers. It's like I don't necessarily know if you're sure you can make the argument that you're making them better, but there's more productive ways to do those things. There's more productive ways to win basketball games. So when people sit there and say, well, if it was that simple to get triple doubles, why don't nobody else do it? It's like because they don't translate to wins. That's the reason why. If the end result is winning, or if the end result is being more productive at work, I'm not going to sit there and just try to prove a point that I can do everything. Cool, that's fine that you can do everything. But if it's not resulting in you becoming a better player or being more productive in gaining wins, why are you still doing it?
So I think my initial response to that would be, what if, even though Westbrook would in this scenario be considered the manager, oftentimes at certain jobs, I guess, but mainly at Westbrook's job, he doesn't always get to control the employees that are around him. And I'm not saying that it's like he's had terrible teams or anything like that, but I mean, listen, Victor Oladipo, I don't really know the issue that he went through during OKC, but was not what he was in Indiana, and was not what he is right now. And
But how is that possible? How is it possible that a player, and I'm not saying this is all Westbrook's fault, but what are the odds that a player who's never been an All NBA player, never been an All Defensive Team caliber player, what are the odds that they go from?
I think a lot of that, a lot of both, because a lot of people are talking about Sabonis too, and
Sabonis was gradual though. I'm not going to.
Yeah, Sabonis was also, at least in my opinion, coming out of Gonzaga, always looked to be kind of a build, like you're gonna have to mold him into something. But to be honest with you, I just think that a lot of that entire era after Kevin Durant, I've never been a fan, really, of Billy Donovan, and I think a lot of the issues, especially what Melo and Paul George reported out of that situation about Billy Donovan, I think speaks more to what was happening there than just Westbrook. I'm not saying that Westbrook didn't like contribute to some things happening with some of those players or stunting their growth in some of those situations, but I think too there is a certain line where I think we both can agree that Westbrook, justifiably so, is considered a superstar in this league. Especially then, he was considered a superstar, and given the talent around him, if I'm him and I have the things that reportedly are going on with Billy Donovan, is it not one of those things where it's like, okay, like a lot of these times I'm gonna have to do this on my own. And
I agree. I don't think Billy Donovan will really cut out for the job coaching wise. And I think that as much as people love to praise Sam Presti, I don't think that they piece together a culture that held certain people accountable, that put players in certain situations. Like when you saying like Billy Donovan, like the idea that Billy Donovan was like the best thing to do with Sabonis is just to put him on the 3-point line. It's like, oh, like that was your offensive scheme, is to have Sabonis at the 3 in the corner 3 as if like he's a space, like he's a stretch 4. Like that actually just wasn't. So Westbrook has nothing to do with that. Like what the productivity that we saw from Sabonis in OKC, even as a rookie, has nothing to do with Westbrook. It has everything to do with the fact that they just felt like Sabonis sitting in a 3 was the best way to use him, right? But a part of it also comes with the fact that Westbrook is a player who can't shoot. So like it's like,
yeah,
well, just get out of. You're actually much better if you just get out of his way, and we'll just play the odds of you making corner threes rather than trying to structure an offense where you're posting up and we have to run these very complex offenses that have Westbrook moving off ball and a whole bunch of other stuff. So just stand in the corner and just shoot threes. So I agree. Some of that had to, a lot of it, actually, I would actually argue more of it had to do with the organization and coaching than Westbrook. But I do believe there's still a lot of things that Westbrook just doesn't bring to the table that you just can't ignore, that ended up holding them back, even if the resulting stat line was a triple double.
mm-hmm.
And I think for years, many people just wanted to ignore it because he ended up with 10 rebounds, which is crazy to me because if you go back and you look at it, that same year, I think LeBron was like 2 rebounds off from averaging a triple, or like 2 rebounds and an assist or something like that from also averaging a triple double. So we made like consciously NBA, like the fan base and the community made the decision to say, because of 2 rebounds and an assist or whatever it was, he's now more impactful for his team. And to me, that was just such the wildest. That was such a horrible decision to make. Or I think it was Harden. I think Harden
it
averaged.
was Harden, yeah.
Yeah, I think he averaged like 30 and 11. I think he was average. He was a point guard. And he just averaged like 11 assists.
Yeah.
He was 2 rebounds away from averaging a triple double. And so that year, we made a decision to say those rebounds don't really matter. Those rebounds matter so much that we're actually going to lean Westbrook. And to me, that is where like it's not even like my disdain for Westbrook. It's the disdain of the logic that came behind why we're praising Westbrook when we all knew his flaws. Everyone knew his flaws.
That's always happened though in MVP voting. No, I mean Kobe got kind of shafted. LeBron's been shafted numerous times.
But you could say someone got shafted because they didn't, like Kobe may have gotten shafted because he didn't win enough games, right? James Harden that year won more games.
Yeah, no, true.
So he won more games.
With maybe that's before Paul and before like that was maybe a worse team around him.
Worst team outside of maybe his first year in Houston. He's playing with Trevor Reeves and Eric Gordon, Patrick Beverly, Ryan Anderson. They added Lou Williams at the end of the season. They replaced it Dwight Howard, Clint Capella.
Ryan Anderson.
And he led that team. He led that team to 55 wins, averaging 29, 11, and 8 rebounds. So 2 rebounds away from a triple double, and that was a decision that was made at that time.
Well, anytime you have a big 3 of James Harden, Patrick Beverly, and Ryan Anderson, I mean, you should expect to be in the playoffs. So
man, it's just really it was Trevor Reeves. Trevor Reeves was receiving, I think, the second most minutes. So like, oh man, he was. I
think about Ryan Anderson and his contract that he somehow got after being on the Pelicans. But I think of that, and somebody told me this the other day. One of my best friends, he's also super into basketball, but he told me this, and this is a real statistic, a real stat here, and I want to get your thoughts on it. There's only 3 players in the history of the NBA, I think, that have gotten 3 over $100 million contracts in the NBA.
For real?
Yes, there's only 3 active NBA players who have gotten ever.
Oh, active. Okay.
Yeah, just active. It might be all time, to be honest.
It
with
might
you.
be. It might be all time. But
it might be all time. But they said only 3 of them have gotten over $100 million 3 times, or like essentially have gotten the max 3 times in their career. Do you think that you can name who they are? I know who they are.
Right,
but
Ryan Anderson can't not be one of them.
No, Ryan Anderson's not one of them.
Okay.
2 of them are really easy. I'll say that. One of them is going to be really hard.
What is is LeBron? No, LeBron isn't one.
LeBron is one.
Okay, he's one. Okay. Is Kevin Durant another one?
Yeah, you got the second one. Now the third one. I'll give you one guess, and then for time's sake, I'll tell you.
Okay. He's in the league right now.
He's in the league right now.
Oh man, that sucks. I know you might have to. What position does he play?
Small forward.
Oh, it's about to be someone massively disrespectful.
You're gonna be so mad.
It's gonna be somebody so massively disrespectful. I don't know why I want to say Rudy Gay, but I know it's not Rudy Gay.
Not Rudy Gay. It is the man.
Is it Harrison Barnes?
No. That's a good guess though.
I think he might be close though.
He might be close. That's a good guess. Be
really close. Who is it?
It is Gordon Hayward. Playing for the Charlotte Hornets. He got a
Isn't
max.
That crazy?
Yeah, he got a max in Utah, a max in Boston, and now he signed a max in Charlotte.
Was that a thing when we were growing up? Because I had the same conversation with my brother where I was like, I don't remember like players like on the caliber of Gordon Hayward just consistently receiving max money.
I think
I never remember.
Here's what I'll say. Me and my friend, the guy who told me this, we kind of had not an argument, but we had a very discussion about Gordon Hayward. And I think I love Gordon Hayward. I really do. I think his game is really good. I think it's dipped in the years that he's just gotten older, which I don't really know if that's his fault because of the injury and stuff like that. But in Utah, I think you can even agree that like he probably deserved that max in Utah, the way that he was playing and they were getting to the playoffs consistently. And then,
what?
I said it. I said consistently, and I didn't mean to say that consistently because I forgot they got knocked out in the Kobe when Kobe dropped 60. But they got to the playoffs like twice in his era time there, did they not?
I think maybe once
or twice. But from
no. Let me be clear.
But I mean, they didn't make the playoffs for how long before that?
They were making it every year because that was the Darren Williams and Carlos Boozer era.
Darren Williams, dude, that's a name that I forgot about, to be honest with you. Meanwhile, Legend of Winning right now for the YouTube audience is just going through it right now.
Oh my goodness!
Someone get this man some water.
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, they made it in his second year, and that was back when Darren Williams and Carlos Boozer was playing, and he was like coming off the bench. And then he made it in his very last year.
Okay,
that's it. Those are the only 2 years.
Had a great year his last year though, which I think deserved the max. Because he was still super young. And then he got it in Boston, which I don't, I probably attributed to Brad Stevens.
But Boston is the year. So he received a max extension after the first 4 years, and he played throughout the extension in Utah. His last year in Utah was the year he was an all-star, averaged 22 points, made the playoffs. And then they beat the Clippers in the first round, which were injured, but then got swept by the Warriors, right?
Yeah. He
gets a max to Boston, and I vividly remember it was like Boston, Utah, and Miami fighting for Gordon Hayward. And I was like I don't like is he a max caliber player? But he was like 26 at the time. So okay, cool. We're now at a point though where like Gordon Hayward is 30.
Yeah.
Like who he is right now is who he's going to be, and even right now, even if we were to like project him to be what he once was before he got injured, it was an all-star caliber player.
Yeah.
Even still, maybe a fringe all-NBA. But a fringe all-NBA should not be getting a max contract at 30, 31 years old. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, I think I think he probably is in Charlotte because that's probably the only team that offered him that amount of money. Charlotte is
But why though?
not the greatest.
I don't remember that. I don't remember
contracts.
players just getting like multiple max contracts at the stage of Gordon Hayward. Like KG, I remember he got multiple max contracts. Kobe, of course.
Yeah, I don't know.
Dirk.
It's I don't really understand the recent one. I don't understand the recent one. I understand the year out of Utah going to Boston, Miami. Because like you said, he's 26. He was an all-star level player. If he had not gotten hurt, I don't know really what that Boston team would have looked like that year with him and Kyrie. That's
not good.
I mean, I don't know though, dude. I like Gordon Hayward is somebody that does a lot of things well. He's a really good defender. He's can score. Yeah. Well, he is. He is a good defender. I mean, he can score.
He's a good defender. He can score.
And, I mean, he's not selfish. Like, he's not somebody who I think not really necessarily I say selfish in the aspect of like, oh, he's always passing the ball. Like, he probably averages like 6 assists or 5 assists, maybe even less than that. I don't know. But what I mean by unselfish, 3 to 4, sure. So what I mean by that is like he's someone who if Brad Stevens or any other coach was like, hey, I need you to do this, he'd be like, okay, like I'll do that. You know what I mean? Like he's not selfish in like an aspect of like, I want to do this, I want to do that. So to me, I think there's a lot of value when saying, okay, if I could get Gordon Hayward to be my third best player, that'd probably be dope. I don't know
But that wasn't the plan though. That's the thing that everybody tends to forget because I remember me killing the Boston Celtics when they made that decision. That was not the plan in the beginning. Because remember, they didn't even know if they were going to get Kyrie. So none of that stuff was the plan. The plan was that Gordon Hayward was going to be the best player in Boston. And then that might have been enough to go get someone like Anthony Davis when they had all the draft picks to go get AD. So you're going to have a duo of AD and Gordon Hayward.
They would have won the NBA Finals.
The only problem I had, though, with that is that Boston at the time drafted Jaylen Brown the year before, and then they made the trade in the next offseason to go down in the draft to get Jason Tatum, and then in that same draft class, they then went to go get. I mean, that same offseason they went to go get Gordon Hayward.
Yeah.
So that was my problem is that they just got a whole bunch of players to play at the same position.
Also got what's his name? Simeon
Semi Ojeleye?
Yes, Ojeleye. They also got him. So
three of
those players play the same position.
Exactly. And then got Kyrie later on that same offseason, right? Yeah. So my problem was like you just got 3 small forwards. Now if Gordon Hayward turned out to be the same Gordon Hayward in Utah, that's cool. But then the real question is like, what would Jason Tatum be? Because right now, Jason Tatum, 3 years in, is already better than Gordon Hayward. So where would Jason Tatum be if you're now trying to split minutes and role and positioning with Jason Tatum and Gordon Hayward? Or what if not that, then what did Jaylen Brown would have been? That's what the true question would be.
Which I think is on Ainge for stacking that, which is on him.
Yeah, definitely. So that would actually be the real question, because if you already had 2 players who were already better than Gordon Hayward, we drafted them, what was the purpose of you even like doing all that signing and back and forth? But it doesn't surprise me because I remember me and my brother was talking about something about like, I just don't remember growing up in a player like Gordon Hayward even really being considered to be a max player. I don't remember like anyone confidently saying like, I gotta give max to Gordon Hayward. And if you did, you were like the Knicks, like you were making a massive mistake because it just didn't happen. Like it was just so wild.
Yeah.
That's a wild thing to say. You're an all-star one time. I have to max you out now.
Who's gonna make the playoffs first? The Knicks or the Hornets?
The Hornets.
Really?
Yeah.
I like them, man. The Knicks are giving out contracts to. I don't know if you know this, but Bismack Biyombo still plays in the league, and he plays for the Hornets.
That is true. Hey,
Dude.
that is true.
I want you to look at the Charlotte Hornets roster, bro. And I looked at that the other day, and there are players that I saw on there that I forgot. Dude, the fact that they just released Nicholas Batum, and now Batum is on the Clippers, there's players on there that I couldn't even believe. I was like, holy cow, man.
But The Knicks
The
are still
contract
playing
to
Joe.
Terry Rozier? Oh my god,
Yeah,
bro.
those contracts are ridiculous. But the Knicks are still playing Joakim Noah, and he's not in the league.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's not in the league. But yeah, you're right. The contracts. Yeah, I'm not. They're the
And
Hornets are trying to
I like
swing.
RJ Barrett. I do. I like RJ Barrett a lot. I
Yeah,
probably like
I do.
LaMelo probably a little bit better, but I just I don't know. LaMelo is probably going to be that guy probably in 2 or 3 years. He'll probably be an all-star. I think he'll grow. He's just too gifted offensively. I don't know what he'll be on defense, but he probably won't have to be much given the state of the league. Which is why I like his brother. We and you talk about just defensively. Lonzo Ball's a really good defender, and I like that he brings that energy. But the Pelicans are in the West. Is there anything with the Western Conference you see shaking up this year? I know the Suns obviously are going to be probably a little bit higher on that 1 to 8 line than they were, given what they did last year. The Mavericks are going to get Kristaps Porzingis back, apparently not within months, but within weeks, apparently, is what Rick Carlisle is saying. So that's going to be interesting to watch for them. I hope that Porzingis is somebody who, that last year that he was with the Knicks, that would be really good to see him play kind of that type of basketball. I think they would be really good. Is there one thing I wanted, before we get into this, one thing I do, because thinking of the Mavericks, I did see something on Twitter the other day that's been gaining a lot of traction. I don't even know if you've seen it, but this possibility that I believe Kawhi could opt out at the end of the year and become a free agent. Is that true? Or who? I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of traction about him going to Dallas to pair with Luka and Kristaps, him and Kawhi. Is that something worth noting at all, or is that a fantasy pipe dream?
Well, yeah, he can be a free agent. I don't know.
Because Luka on the rookie deal right now?
Yeah, Luka's still in his rookie deal, but he has another. I'm looking at it right now. He has another year after this season, so it's not like he's coming off the books. The only 2 players who are coming off the books who are making any large amount of money is Tim Hardaway Jr. and James Johnson.
Okay,
that's it. Josh Richardson could come off the books as well because he has a player option, but I don't know if he's going to find more than $12 million a year in the market. I doubt it. It's possible, but I doubt it. The only thing I could come to a conclusion that it might happen is if there's a sign and trade. That could happen, and if that's the case, then yeah, all they have to give up is Tim Hardaway, James Johnson, and then Josh Richardson, and that's like over 30 million right there on a year-to-year basis, and that would equal to it. But then obviously that cuts into their depth. I mean, it's possible just because of sign and trade, but it's not possible. It don't it's possible just by signing directly to them. No, it doesn't look possible in those regards.
So
I wouldn't bet on it though. I don't think Kawhi did all of that just to say I'm leaving in 2 years anyway, with the Clippers. I don't think he did all that. I think he legitimately wanted to be in LA, and he wanted to see if the Clippers could make it happen. And since they made it happen, it's okay, I'm going to do it. Because I think if he wasn't going to go to LA, he was going to see if he was going to get Masai to make the moves for him. And I don't know if it wasn't him being already where he was at in Toronto or moving back to LA. I don't know if there was that many other options available. But him just signing to Dallas, it doesn't seem like it's possible.
Yeah. What is and then back to the original question, do you think anything shakes up with the West? Who are your favorites in that side of the conference, or in that conference?
I'm surprised how good the Suns look.
Yeah.
And I knew they were going to maybe some momentum, a full season of DeAndre Ayton potentially, Chris Paul and Jay Crowder being adults in a locker room full of younger kids, the development of Devin Booker. I've said
I like Chris Paul. Real quick, I love Chris Paul's narrative now. I think he got a lot of slander for what happened in Houston, and with the Clippers. Yeah, and this back-to-back OKC, and then what he's doing with the Suns. I just really like the way that his narrative is shifting, because I like Chris Paul. I think he's a good player.
Which is rare. A narrative shifting as quick as Chris Paul's narrative is so so because like Jimmy Butler, essentially it took Jimmy Butler to take a team to the finals before people were like, oh yeah, he's a winner.
Which is
Like
insane.
he took a Bulls team that was losing Noah, Dang, and D Rose and still made them relevant
Yeah.
with a perimeter with him, D Wade, and Rondo, which is difficult in a league where you need floor spacing. He then went to Minnesota, a team that had not made the playoffs since the KG era, made them a relevant team and put them in the playoffs, and then was one shot away from making the conference finals in Philly with Ben Simmons who can't shoot and Joel Embiid who doesn't take his job all that serious and was overweight. That's what he did, and people ended every single team with the perception of, oh, he's a bad teammate. That was just the wildest thing in the world.
So weird.
So then he goes to Miami and leads them to the finals with a whole bunch of other young players, and everyone's like, oh no, like he's a good guy. But like it's Chris Paul, what he's doing is great. But yeah, I was like DeAndre Ayton, I like him. Booker. I said when Mikal Bridges was drafted, I vividly remember making a video on my draft video saying like, oh, that might be like the steal of the draft. I actually think he's going to be
He's really good.
nice. Cameron Johnson is coming along quicker than I think a lot of people expected. Lights out from three, just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And again, just having two grown-ups in the room at all time, and Chris Paul and Jay Crowder, I think a lot of people over or underestimated. I've always been a huge fan of Dario Saric as well. So
Yeah.
I actually like a lot of their players. Defensively, I was always afraid because CP3 is declining and so is Jay Crowder. So defensively, what were they going to be willing to do? But defensively, they're actually great. A lot of it has to do with how much they control the pace, and that has everything to do with Chris Paul. So I actually like them a bit more. Hopefully, it's just not a hot start. And then the other team that I think will be interesting is the Utah Jazz. I'm not saying that either one of those teams are going to beat the Clippers or the Lakers or even the Nuggets, but Utah, I think people forget like last year, Utah was. I know they blew the 3-1 lead, but they were just one game away from making the second round. I think they would have had what it took to beat the what you call it the Clippers as well.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, last year they were doing that while Bogdanovich was hurt. He
Yeah.
wasn't like Bogdanovich wasn't even playing
True. I
in the
forgot
second
about
part
that.
of the season, and he was averaging 20 points for them, and they just missed 20 points.
Yeah.
So people completely forgot about that. So I actually think that team is going to be good once everyone is healthy, and I think they're like above 500 even with Donovan Mitchell struggling significantly, and it's just because again they control pace, they control defense.
I like that for Mike Conley. I'm a big Mike Conley guy too. I think he's kind of got.
Oh yeah, and that was with Mike Conley struggling practically all throughout the season.
Yeah.
And now this season he's playing really good. So like they did that with Conley struggling and Bogdanovich essentially like the second part of the season, and they were still that good. Yeah. So if everyone is clicking, I actually think that's going to be a really good team.
I like the Trailblazers as well. I think they're doing good things. I just don't know. Yeah. I just don't know what their ceiling is because my biggest thing with the Trailblazers has always been defense. Their backcourt. I know that they like each other and they love playing with each other, but sometimes I just wish that the Trailblazers would just trade McCollum for somebody else. Because I just don't really see, like, they're both so offensively gifted, but both of them are so poor defensively that I feel like there's no one that you can say, like, when you go against a Steph, when you go against, a Harden or Westbrook or whatever, you see another, Mitchell, any of these other guards in the league, Jamal Murray's quickly becoming a really big name. It's like who's gonna guard them? And I know the thing is for them, it's like, well, who's gonna guard us? It's like, okay, I get it, but it's like there's got to be some like relevance of like there's like defense on the team, and I feel like they just don't really give a shit. I love Gary Trent Jr. Jesus, he's brought so much energy and swagger. I feel like it's just insane. He just walks out and just drips swagger and doesn't give a fuck and just shoots threes and nails them.
Oh my god.
I love that.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I think in the beginning when they started this out with Dame and CJ, it was always this concern of like, oh, they need more scoring in the front court. They need like more well balanced scoring, and so like that's why they push so hard for Nurkic. But between the pickups that they had with Gary Trent, Carmelo Anthony, pick up a Robert Covington, Derek Jones, like they actually
Covington's been really good in that offense.
They've
Been really good.
They've actually filled out the rest of the perimeter and 3-point shooting with quality enough scores that's actually fine. The problem now is, like you said, defensively, they're hurt so much, especially inside, that they actually don't even need Nurkic's points anymore. Like his points can easily be fulfilled by the other like corresponding players, and they're more likely going to be more impactful and more efficient than Nurkic is going to be with his scoring because they're shooting threes. So to be honest with you, if they can flip a Nurkic for a legit like defensive interior player and just have him pick and roll and have him actually like defending the paint, that would be way more valuable than what they have.
There's
right
no
now.
shot that they do that though.
I don't know who would even. I don't even know who would be the player. Like I mean, if they could get like a Miles Turner, amazing, and that would immediately make them instantly better. But like they would have to get that type of player for them to take the next leap because they no longer need.
I didn't even think about that.
Services.
Miles Turner would be so good on the Portland Trailblazers.
But I don't. They would have to give up more than obviously just Nurkic, right? So like I don't know what they would have to give up. But like something like that would immediately make them better. But I don't know who that would be. But like essentially, I'm saying they don't really need the services of Nurkic anymore. Like whatever he was bringing them in the beginning with, they don't need it anymore.
Yeah. So then when it's all said and done, I'm not gonna make you choose a finals, even though you'll probably you'll pick the Lakers because you're a Lakers fan. But
or they're just a better team. I mean,
okay, well maybe. Final four teams at the end of it all in the conference finals for the East.
The Final Four just in the East?
No, So I meant Final Four and Final 2 and 2.
I'm gonna say Brooklyn and Philly.
Okay.
And then
out of that,
I'm sorry. Brooklyn and Miami.
You think Miami's going to get back to the conference finals?
I think they are. I think every team that could potentially stop Miami, they just match up with them so well that it doesn't really matter. Like they match up with Giannis really well. They match up with Embiid. Well, maybe not Embiid. Well, actually, I'll take it back. I think they match up with Embiid and Simmons really well also. Like if you're putting Bam on Embiid, he may not stop him completely, but with like
he's gonna do enough.
The intelligence of like when to sag off of Simmons and when not. The inconsistency of Danny Green as well in the playoffs, because I know about that as a Laker fan. Like all that is gonna play a role. I just think Miami just has too many versatile defensive pieces to not beat Philly, to not beat Giannis and the Bucks, and to not beat Boston. So I'm gonna say Miami and Brooklyn. Obviously depending on how the bracket pans out. And then
who wins that game? Who wins that series?
Man, that's gonna be a tough one.
It's not. It's 4. It's like 4-1 Brooklyn.
Wow.
Yeah.
4-1?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think to be honest with you, I think that Brooklyn is about to win 2 to 3 championships in a row. I think that starting this year. I really do.
If DeAndre Jordan is playing at the level that he was with the Clippers, maybe. But like if the only thing that DJ does is just kill them on the boards, but offensively he's basically nothing, and defensively he's nowhere near as good as he once was, then no, I completely disagree. And then defensively on the perimeter, like who's playing defense in Brooklyn on the perimeter?
I don't really know.
If you have KD on the perimeter, maybe like that'd be easily your best perimeter defender. But who else?
Is LeVert a terrible defender?
No, yeah, come on, he's not.
I mean, I don't know. The only time I've ever seen LeVert play is his offensive highlights. Brooklyn hasn't been relevant in a long time, so it's like I haven't been able to catch a game.
If you don't want to consider LeVert terrible, he's far from like saying he's far highlighting on the defensive end. But I would still say Brooklyn. I would not say 4-1, but I would say Brooklyn as of right now. And then out west, obviously I have to go with the Lakers. And then I'm probably gonna say the Clippers. I'm gonna say the Clippers should bounce back.
I think the Clippers got better. To be honest, I understand that you lose
Yeah,
Harrell, but I think Ibaka's a better fit for them than Harrell. I
agreed.
don't like so
I think so too.
I don't think that they got worse. I think they got better. I think, you know, I
Because
I don't
Ibaka
really
almost
know.
average what Harrell averaged last year. He's just a better defender.
Oh yeah, and he's a better shooter.
Yeah, yeah.
So you know, to me, it's literally a full upgrade, for them. I I think that if the season wouldn't have gone to a bubble, I don't really know what would have happened. I
Yeah,
don't
3 points.
I don't
3
really
points.
know what. I hate when people are like, oh man, like whatever, LeBron, Mickey Mouse. It's like, whatever, dude. Like it's not like the Lakers made that situation happen. They had to play in the situation just like anybody else. So,
Yeah,
I don't really blame the Lakers for winning that championship. I put a lot of it on Paul George, to be honest with you. I know that Kawhi Leonard didn't really have a great game 7. But I don't know. I don't really know what happened there. But I do think that that given that series again, I don't think that would happen again. I don't think that Kawhi would not show up in a game 7 again. And if it did happen again, then maybe it's time to
but
reevaluate his legacy. But
I don't think it should have ever even gotten to that point. The only thing that scares me about the Lakers is that they're like heavily dependent on like these inconsistent 3-point shooters to like give the proper spacing.
yeah, I've never
And
liked
last year it
last
worked
year
out for
was
them, but
I
I don't
do you
think
think
so.
that they before I'll let you continue. Do you think they should move on from Kuzma and try to get other pieces around that are not, that are more consistent in that area to try to flip Kuzma? Because Kuzma is, I think, by most NBA standards, people would consider him an above average player and
Yeah,
talent to work with. So I
yeah.
think that you can get pieces for him that would be better than what the roster is right now for the Lakers. And I've thought that since last season. I don't really understand why they didn't try to move him last season. But
Well,
what do you?
this year might be his year to like up the value for him because I agree. Like I don't. He's good enough to where because of his age, you'll get something in return for him. Like I can see somebody buying into the idea of like adding Kuzma to their young core could
Yeah,
really help them grow together because he's only like 24, 25, no older than 26. So I feel like that could truly help them out. Um, but in terms of what this team needs, they're much more. It's much more valuable to put a more consistent shooter around LeBron, AD, and a player like Dennis Schroeder at the point guard position. It's way more valuable to have a consistent shooter than what you would get out of Kuzma. Now, this so far this year, he's actually been fine from three. I think he had like
mm-hmm.
one really bad game, but so far he has been completely fine shooting threes and rather consistent. But if he can up his value, then yeah, I think there'll be multiple teams out there that'll be willing to like swing hard and get him. But the problem is like if you're going with the Clippers, I'm not saying Serge Ibaka is that player, but Serge Ibaka is capable enough to like move in front of Anthony Davis and stay in front of him.
Yeah.
So like out of the handful of players in the league that have that ability to do so, Serge Ibaka is one of them. You have two perimeter defenders that are supposed to be in front of LeBron,
Mm-hmm.
while the other one isn't defending him. He's either helping off of LeBron or helping off of AD and making the right reads. And then Pat Bev defensively should be like the things that we were saying they were supposed to do last year. There's nothing really stopping them from doing it this year
Yeah.
outside of different coaching and then the Serge Ibaka acquisition, which I agree. I think even though people went crazy for the Lakers picking up Montrezl Harrell, if the Clippers are like we're going to let up on Montrezl Harrell to go get Serge Ibaka, well then that makes sense because Serge Ibaka can score just as many points, a better floor spacer, and a better defender.
The Lakers
So
were in
like,
that conversation as well, weren't they, to try to get Ibaka?
and to be honest with you, out of the two bigs in Toronto, Ibaka and Marc Gasol, the Lakers got Gasol,
Yeah.
but I would have much rather have Ibaka
Ibaka.
just because of his defensive versatility. But I actually like both of them, so I'm not really like mad at the fact that we got Marc Gasol. But out of my last two, it would be the Lakers and Clippers. I'm still gonna go with the Lakers just because I don't think that there is any consistent answer. Like what I saw last year from AD was so impressive. I think many people don't. I think people
He
don't
was the
talk
best
about
player
that
on the
enough.
team, in my
People don't
opinion.
want to. people don't want to admit that.
He was.
But I can see how in the finals you can come to that conclusion. But in a if you actually
not even in the playoffs, to me all year, the regular season, he was the best player on the team. If
you really watch them last year, defensively, how good they were had everything to do with Anthony Davis. And the fact that they were one of the best teams defensively, that was Anthony Davis to a T. And by the time we got to the finals, it was even more clear that what Anthony Davis could do defensively, because the fact that there was stretches, like straight up games, where Anthony Davis took on the responsibility to stay in front of Jimmy Butler. At that point, it should not even been a conversation anymore.
This is insane.
The problem, though, is that obviously, like, trying to like calculate defensive impact is extremely difficult. So a lot of things that Anthony Davis does goes overlooked. But defensively, like what Anthony Davis is doing, I don't think I've ever, not ever. I think Kevin Garnett has stretches like that as well. But it's so hard to just find somebody to produce like that defensively and then go on the other side of the court and give you 25 to 30 consistently. Like, just do it consistently.
Yeah.
And that was the only thing I was afraid of, is that I know for a fact LeBron, because of his history, will go out there and give you 25 to 30 points with 8 assists or more and 8+ rebounds, because he's been doing that for literally 15 years in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't matter which era, which decade, which team, the playing style, the scheme. That's what he does. He's going to do that. And it's only like throughout NBA history to find some consistent level of play from a player, that's extremely difficult to do, right? Like Kevin Durant does it, Kobe did it, Dirk did it, Duncan did it. Like, it's like Shaq did it, especially when he was his peak. Like, it's only a handful of players you can say night in and night out through a playoff series, I can expect this, this, and this from them. Anthony Davis, if he can do that again this year, it was going to be ridiculous, because what he was doing last year, I was so impressed that he was able to just go out there and for every night, I think there was only like 2 or 3 games we didn't average 25 or more in the playoffs. And I was like, that's ridiculous.
What is then the outcome of your Lakers-Nets finals?
Oh, man.
That would be a fun. I hope that happens, because that would be really,
I hope it happens
with
too.
Everyone healthy. Kyrie, LeBron, there's a lot of stories, a lot of narratives. It would be good. It would be good for the league.
That would be amazing for the league, because at that point, the KD LeBron talk would be
at an all-time high.
So like truly, not only at an all-time high, it can be truly tested. It'll just be truly tested. Like, at that point, there's no conversation or argument between either one of them. Man, that's the only thing is that I think that's a situation where you cannot, if you're the Lakers defensively on the perimeter, there cannot be any mistakes, because that offense is going to be so potent on the Brooklyn Nets side. Is going to be it's going to be ridiculous. And both AD and LeBron will have their hands full with trying to contain Kyrie and KD to the T. Like, it'll be so difficult to stop them. And when I was watching them against the Heat the past finals, there were just stretches where, like, for whatever reason, I don't know how, Duncan Robinson is just wide open. I'm like, how does that happen? How does Duncan Robinson, out of all people, get open?
Yeah.
And the truth is, and people don't, I'm a Laker fan, and I don't even like to admit this, but if Gordon Dragic was healthy, that would have been a 7-game series.
Yeah.
Easily. Because if they had another ball handling penetrator outside of Jimmy, that would have been a 7-game series. And the problem was that there was a lot of mistakes being made by inexperienced players that are leaving people open. And now we're moving into this season, and Kuzma might have to receive more minutes. Harrell might be like Montrezl Harrell might be unplayable in that series. Wow. No cap. There's no way they can pay him.
Not a good look.
No.
I'm
still gonna go Lakers in 7 though, just because of LeBron. But that's gonna be a good series.
And that's interesting, because that's that is literally why I'm picking the Nets, is because I think Kevin Durant is the best player in the world when he's healthy at this current time. And I think that if he's going to be 100% healthy in that series, even though we can all agree that the deck was stacked against the league with the Warriors when Kevin Durant was on that team, I still think Kevin Durant feels that he mentally, like, he became the best player. I mean, he even said it, right? He even was like, if that's your king, then what am I? Because he felt like, I mean, he just believes that. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, it's like one of these things where the narrative has now become, again, because he's been gone for over a year, that, LeBron James is the best player in the NBA, which is not a bad take because he is when Kevin Durant's not in the game. So it's like one of those things where now I think he's going to feel even more pressure. And then he's got Kyrie in his ear, who I know Kyrie wants to win that series. I think Kevin Durant is going to show up in the finals in a way that we didn't even see him show up in the Warrior finals, which I think is going to be very scary. I think he's going to do some things that are maybe even historic. And that's why I think not only this year, the year after, and maybe even the year after that, the Nets will probably win the NBA championship. But we'll see. I don't know.
I have to see. I think it's so interesting how like KD and Kyrie get like this image of like who they are in the playoffs when like if you actually just go look at the facts, they're not those players. Like KD became that player with the Warriors largely because of the floor spacing around him.
Yeah.
But if you go back to the OKC years, it'll be funny. Like people be like, Kobe's inefficient, but then they'll praise KD.
Yeah.
Go back and look at KD's playoff numbers.
Me and you, when we watched that series, the series that his final series with Westbrook, when they were playing the Warriors, me and you went back, and I even admitted, I said, listen, like, Westbrook gets a lot of hate for that series, but Kevin Durant was just as much at fault for losing that 3-1 series to the Warriors than Westbrook, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it's just interesting, like how certain players built these, like there's this mythical ideology of who they are and how they perform in certain situations. But when you actually just go look at the facts, it's like Kevin Durant is still great. Like I don't want to make it seem like he's not.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just like, I'm looking at numbers right now. If you just go look at the numbers in OKC, like 45% from the field, 33% from three, 28, 29 points. Like that's who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Kobe will put up those exact same numbers and people will claim that he's inefficient.
Yeah.
His career efficiency numbers in the playoffs went up because in his 3 years with the Warriors, 51% from the field and nearly 40% from three.
Jesus.
So unless something like that is going to happen, which I'm not saying it's not, but unless something like that is going to happen, and unless he goes back to like the same player that he was in OKC, I just don't give someone like Kevin Durant the same benefit of the doubt that I give to LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying there isn't any with KD because there clearly is, but I can't do that. And the same thing with Kyrie. Like people sit there and say, "Oh, he's the game winner, like the buzzer beat." Like, but if you go back and go look at Kyrie in the playoffs, like it's not all that impressive. And then when you go look at the year in which he played with Boston, it's even worse. Like that year he played in Boston, it's amazing to me how so many people just like gloss over how bad he was in that one postseason run with Boston.
Mm-hmm.
He would just gloss over it.
Well, so. I think that Kyrie has that X factor. I just don't know. I think that with any, because to me, there's not a lot of players who are an X factor no matter what. And what I mean by that is, like you said, LeBron is somebody that I know for a fact is going to give me these type of numbers. Michael Jordan was someone that I knew was going to give me those type of numbers. Kobe, Shaq, the players that you listed before. With Kyrie in particular, I'm not sure that he's one of those players. So what I mean by that is I think that he's an absolute X factor and an absolute game changer, but he's someone that I think needs the right situation around him. And I think that Kevin Durant being on the opposite, because he's right. I don't think that he's ever had somebody that has been as deadly a shooter as him on the same floor as him, which opens up the floor immensely. So I think that he's able to work in a way that he hasn't really been able to do that before, and he certainly was not able to do that in Boston. So I don't know. I think that he is going to be a little bit better in the playoffs than recent years. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and find out for that.
That's a fair assessment. Like if he has someone like at the caliber of a LeBron or KD, then his numbers will go back up. So I would agree that's a fair assessment. It's just that I just can't, like, if basing off of like I've seen LeBron in every situation, it's been like historic, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And
but I
if
think
if
that
you
is, I joke around a lot and say that like LeBron's probably like my sixth best player ever of all time, and that's a joke. I think he's definitely top 5. I just think that is like an anomaly. Like LeBron is an anomaly. You know what I mean? That like I think that with football, like I heard this the other day. Someone was like, "Isn't it crazy that Tom Brady and the Patriots just made it seem normal to get to Super Bowls?" And now that Bill Belichick and Tom Brady aren't on the same team, everyone's like, "Oh, Bill Belichick and the Patriots, they suck." But it's like, dude, like that, like there's so much that goes into creating a winning culture, and that's not normal. That's not normal. LeBron getting to the finals 9 out of 10, whatever it was, that is not normal. Like,
but I also want to say this because going back to what you said before about like who's the next person up, like the only way that you're that player is if you make things like that normal.
Yeah.
Like Kevin Durant leading OKC to the conference finals as many times as he did, that's also not normal. Like
very true.
Even with Westbrook on the team, another All NBA, that's still not normal.
Yeah.
Like we just see multiple times since KD has left that All NBA caliber players have teamed up and they have struggled to get to the conference finals.
Yeah.
They were doing that normally. And if Anthony Davis can keep putting up these numbers at a consistent rate, yeah, you're right. It's not normal that a player should just come out there and give you 25, 11, 4, and 2 blocks normally. That's not normal. And so if Tim Duncan was doing that, Kobe was doing it, Shaq was doing it, MJ, Dirk, like those players, regardless of their flaws and imperfections, if you're doing that normally, that's not something that should be seen. And you're right. So if like that's the only way that I can see like Luka and Zion getting to that point. And I agree. I don't think Kyrie is that player, but he can have moments.
Yeah.
And the thing with the Nets is that they have so much firepower is that even if it's just moments, it's like, okay, if you can do that, then that can be a problem. But what Kyrie did in like 2016, where like both him and LeBron was like, I'm giving you 41
balling, dude.
Like stuff like that is like, all right, I guess y'all are bound to win at this point, like regardless of what's going on. So like stuff like that, I agree.
We're probably gonna wrap this up, but I do want to get your I just want to have a conversation before we go about YouTube in general. With a lot of the things that's been happening in the basketball /2K community. You've obviously heard about this 2Hype situation and the stuff that's going on. What do you want to say about that, man? Because I'll just lay it out here for you, my thoughts and my opinions, which, some people may care, some people may not really care what I have to say. But I just think from an outside perspective, before the Jesser and the Cash video, which I'll be honest, the Cash video, I don't really know if that needed to be made, if that's all he was going to say, to be honest with you.
It didn't.
But with the TD, the Los, the Mopey stuff, all those 3 things combined, I still look at it as kind of like just, okay, if let's just take at 100% that what all 3 of those guys said was 100% factual, which probably isn't true, but let's just say that what they said is 100% factual. If everything they said was true, I still am not really, like, I'm just seeing like bad people. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that like I look at and I go, man, like this is worth like 2Hype losing their deals. This is worth like 2Hype being like dropped from 100 Thieves. This is like, I don't see any legal ramifications to anything that's going on, but all these parties are talking about suing each other, and I'm kind of like, for what? There's just like not a lot of information that would lead me to believe that like anything legal could happen here. The second thing is, after what Jesser said in his video, I'm not really sure who to believe, but that's the problem, is that this now has become a word of mouth of like he said, she
Yeah.
said type of thing. Because even what Jesser said in his video, he didn't really release a lot of information. Like a lot of it was him just kind of saying like, he would play a Mopey clip and then talk about the Mopey clip. There was like 1 or 2 times that he actually like put up text message evidence. Other than that, there wasn't like, it was just like him kind of talking and saying like, I'm just kind of defending myself. And it's like, okay, but that doesn't really like explain the low stuff. That doesn't really explain the TD stuff. It was him just addressing the Mopey situation.
Well, I'll say this. What's funny, because we were just watching it. It's funny because in terms of the TD and low stuff, when they specifically said, because TD and Los's problems that the decision of them being kicked out, a lot of it just lack of communication, right?
Yeah.
And in response to that being done to Mopey as well, Jesse's response was like, "Oh yeah, we talked about it. You were part of the, like, you could have been a part of the discussion and stuff like that." And it was like, I don't think Jesse understood that the conversation wasn't like him being a part of it. The conversation was no one was communicating with the people they got kicked out, that y'all were attempting to kick them out. So like, I think out of everything that Jester said, that was like one big aspect where I was like you didn't actually address the legitimate problem.
Yes.
But I will say, coming from a situation where I live in a house with Agent and Waleed, we deal with other YouTubers rather consistently, really on a week-to-week basis, and definitely on a month-to-month basis when AMP comes down. Communication is what I think a lot of people have a problem with.
Yes.
And it seems like a lot of what happened in this situation, on the fault of both Mopey and Jesser and everyone else in 2Hype, had a lot to do with communication. Things that both Jesser and Mopey admitted fault with in the video itself.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, I don't think that anything should escalate to the point of legal ramifications. I think a lot of it just has to do with, at the end of the day, we need to look at what we could have done better. A lot of it sounds like communication could have been done better. And so based off of that, you just have to take it is as it is and continue to grow as an individual from it. So that was my biggest takeaway, because even dealing with other YouTubers, that is a problem. And as all of us who are young men growing up, trying to make a lane for ourselves, being entrepreneurs, communication can be lost in that as well. And I think that was the biggest problem. But if people want to, hear my thoughts on like who won out of the two, like you said, Cash, I don't really think that video wasn't even.
I didn't understand that video really.
it was so pointless. Cash was literally like, yeah, I wasn't there, so I can't really tell you what's going on, but here's my perspective. I'm like, Cash, if you weren't there,
you don't have a perspective.
Yeah, you have no perspective. Your perspective holds no weight in this conversation since you were not there. But honestly, I think a lot of what Jesser might end up losing it just because he keeps pushing the friend angle, and so does Moby. And so from that, Jesser might lose a bit because like they were friends, and so the way that you communicate with him should be on a closer level. But in terms of me as an adult and how I deal with my friends, I don't think I don't really see that much of what Jesser did was all that wrong, to be honest.
I don't either.
I genuinely don't. But this is me as an adult though. Like I can see how kids could see how, but it's like I was watching the video and I was like, I don't know what Mopey expected out of Jesser, but it's not much else that even I would have done as a friend, where I'm like, he was going on about like how his hallway was messy and how he had to remember certain ways to step into his room and nobody was willing to help him. I'm like, nigga, I live with Agent right now. If there's a mess upstairs in the hallway of Agent's room, like I'm not about to like stop everything I'm doing to go help him do it, especially if I keep asking him what's going on and I'm not getting a response. Like that's not my responsibility to help you clean up your mess. I might help you because I'm your friend, but I shouldn't be tagged with that responsibility.
But there's also too with that, I just want to say that I think it's odd to me that was even something that Mopey was talking about, because I assume Jesser is just as busy, if not more busy, than Agent. And I can tell you from a fact that Agent is very busy. So it makes zero sense that if you know, someone as busy as that would do more than what Jesser did. Like, yeah. So I just, with that point, I just want to say, like, I genuinely, that's probably the biggest where I go, okay, I agree with that, because there's no way that I can see Jesser even having the time, and especially if he didn't even live there. From what I'm gathering, he didn't even live there. To kind of go, hey man, like I'm reaching out to you through text, but I'm literally trying to run 4 businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if he would want to do that. I don't know.
Run 4 businesses. I have my own personal relationships because he broke up with his girlfriend this year, a 2-year relationship. So I have things of my own. Even he said that he was also abusing certain substances as well. Like, people have lives outside of what you expect them to do as well. So it's hard for me to be sympathetic for someone who is expecting to also be burdened with your issues on top of what they have going on.
Yeah.
But that's me. I can see why that may come across as me lacking empathy, because it's like, well, they're friends in. But the way that I just deal with my own problems, like, I don't like burdening. I don't like putting on a burden to other people with my situations. Like, I put myself in this situation. I need to get myself out of this situation. Like, Mopey was sitting there saying, like, we were, I only was abusing the substances because I was around them all the time. And I'm like, I'm around substances all the time as well. I'm an adult. Like, I make my own decisions. I can't be abusing substances. I can't make that decision and then say, you need to participate in me getting off of them, or you should have helped me while I was trying to figure out my way.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah, but that's why as adults we can come to that conclusion. The reason why Jesser might lose is because he keeps playing this friend angle, which again they are, and how much he loved them. But if you don't understand how adulthood works and how you have to take responsibility for your own actions, you can't be upset that somebody else didn't bail you out. Then it's like you might understand Mopey's angle a bit more because you're empathetic to who Mopey is as a person. And even going into it, Mopey was already the punching bag. So it's already feels easier to like feel bad for him type thing. So, but at the end of the day, it still all feels like lack of communication.
Yes.
Regardless of on Mopey's end, regardless on Jesser's end, or even the ability to communicate. Because the way that certain people communicate may come across as too harsh and hard. But to them, it's like, I'm just being straightforward, so there's no way that you can misinterpret me. So everything is just miscommunication, probably not understanding people's personalities. I think that's the greatest thing about Agent and I. Before we got to the point where we are right now, we were talking for years. So I already understood who he was as a person. It wasn't like I was just jumping into something that I wasn't familiar with that individual. So certain things like that will have an effect on you as a person. And I think that was the biggest thing. It was just lack of communication. But I don't end watching Jesser's video thinking that Mopey. I end up with that. Me siding more so with Jesser than Mopey, but understanding that both of them may end up losing largely just because of lack of communication. But with Zach and LSK, they're going to. I think they're going to lose. Yeah, I think
they're in trouble.
The things that they were saying that are consistent with TD and Los as well. I don't know how they're going to win that. And the fact that LSK already uploaded a video and he deleted it on top of that, I'm being so, I don't even think that they should even address any of the things that happened.
No.
Jesser, Cash, I don't know. Again, I don't know why. But Jesser, understandably so, because the relationship was more than just business.
Yes.
But though everybody else,
I think
there's no way. There's no way I would ever.
I don't know if I could pick a winner per se for Mopey and Jesser. I just kind of I look at that and I just say, wow, like that to me is the epitome of life and the epitome of relationships and the epitome of friendships that, you know, they don't always go the way that you want them to, and people disappoint you and other people disappoint you, and that is just, you kind of have to work through that because that's life, right? I think back to the substance things. I'm everybody in my stream, everybody that knows me knows that I smoke weed. To think that just because I'm around you and Agent and Waleed that all of a sudden I'm gonna get you guys to start smoking weed is just beyond ludicrous. It's just dumb. So
and to even think that you then are responsible for us to get off of weed is also that's even crazier.
That point is even crazier. So I don't really know about that. I think that's just kind of like me. I look at that and I go, toss up, I guess. Yes, the Zach and the LSK. Zach looks extremely bad considering the things that he also said with the Los and TD, but also his girlfriend situation that Mopey felt the need to address is also kind of like, what is that about, dude? Like that was the part that I looked at that from Mopey's video and was like, that's the biggest L of this video is like, we're just gonna gloss over the fact that we're talking about him just painting this girl in like one of the most ridiculous negative lights I've ever seen in my life. Like that's kind of weird, dude. Like it's very weird behavior. And then me and Agent had to talk about LSK. We know that LSK even for the longest was memeing that he was Hollywood. So I don't really know if this truly hurts him. If he just doesn't say anything about it, I don't know if this would like really affect his character. But I think that it affects his character more than it does Jesser. So for that reason, I think that LSK and Zach being the highest priority, they are in trouble of very much having a public perception of them in a negative light for a very long time, which again, that is the only thing that if I was 100 Thieves, I would go, man, those two guys are we need to figure that situation out with both of them.
But the only reason why I think LSK and Zach, especially LSK, is just because it's a reoccurring theme. And now it's not only is it reoccurring, but it's also now coming from someone that is already received the label as like this helpless, defenseless person. So why would you continue to do those things to someone like Mopey? Like if the perception, like if somebody did something bad to Patrick Beverly, no one is going to care because it's like he's still a human. Like I get that, but like he already has the perception of like
embraces the villain role.
Exactly, he already embraces it. Like no one's going to care right now. What's happening to like Curry? Curry's not even a villain, but like when people go on Twitter and like, oh man, I feel bad for him, and everybody's like, well, get over it because LeBron and Harden has been dealing with it for years, right? Like those are things that happen.
Yeah,
but if somebody like comes out and says like something wild to like Klay Thompson or Zach or not Zach or like Trae Young, like likable players, like wow, like why are you saying something bad about them? Like the way that their image is constructed, it's like why would you like why would you go out of your way to say something so harsh to them? What's the point? Like there's been no ill will towards that player at all. And the same thing with Mopey, the perception of him is already what it is. To then add on top of it, and on the fact that it's like what are you doing? And like the whole we were laughing about the idea that the video would start and Zach would like not be animated when the videos like that. That's such a petty thing to do. And as a YouTuber, you understand how important it is to bring that in.
Are you talking about Jidel?
Or was it Jidel?
I think it was Jidel. But the thing about Jidel is
that was wild.
The thing about Jidel is like I don't know any of these guys, so I just really give a fuck. I think Jidel is so forgettable that I understand why people are mad at him for that, but I genuinely don't like. To me, it's like, okay, like so what? He didn't want to be a part of this guy's YouTube video, and for whatever reason,
but for to be like a reoccurring, like you can just
petty.
go on his channel. You can go on his channel and you can just go back to back to back, and it's like there is a stretch of videos where Jidel is just like you're straight facing it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, you're doing that. You are purposely doing that
for sure.
There's no way we're starting videos every single time and you do that because there's like you're a YouTuber, so we shouldn't even have to explain to you why you should bring energy.
Yeah,
right. Especially when that's not who you are. It'd be one thing if you were the low energy, the no energy guy, but no, you bring energy to everyone else's videos, including your own.
Yeah,
and yet you're purposely. So then that's why it's like compounded onto everything else. So even though if he may be forgettable, it's like, oh, and this is happening. So
Sure.
what else might be like? That's why it's like it's so overwhelming. But the Jester thing, from an adult standpoint, like I'm reading my replies right now, and there's people like, well, but Mopey could have did this, and like he could have did this for Mopey, and it's like, technically speaking, yeah, he could have. But
Mm-hmm.
like, why is he? Why is
Why
he
is he obligated?
obligated?
Yeah.
He's not
He's not
obligated.
obligated? Give me that.
He's literally not obligated at all. And what's crazy is when Jester started the video with Mopey's father demanding paperwork, I'm like, you already giving me vibes of someone who's irresponsible. Because
Yeah.
why am I talking to your father at this point? Like, you're an adult. Either you communicate with me, or you go get a lawyer. But don't have your
And that felt
father
very
talking to me that way.
that felt very specific from him, because then he brings up the fact that he was trying to help Tyler or Mopey get a credit card and get a credit score and do all these different things that kind of shined light on Mopey maybe not being responsible or mature. I think to break that whole situation down, it just seems that Mopey is someone who, which this happens, maybe the game was just a little bit too bright for him. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It just seems like maybe he was just a little bit overwhelmed, especially bringing in the substance abuse, whatever. That's a very, even my transition down here to Atlanta, I see that you guys live a very different lifestyle than I've ever lived. You know what I mean? And so, not everyone is able to do that, especially living like we are on a mild side here in Atlanta. First of all, I mean, 2020 COVID happened. We're not going out all the time. There's not, the lifestyle, even though we live a very nice lifestyle here, it's not anywhere compared to 2016, 17 to now, living in LA in a house with your friends. Everyone's young. Everybody's trying, there's a lot going on. So yeah. I get that if he felt he got lost in it a little bit, but to just, I don't know, put all the blame on your friends that you guys did this to me, and this is, I don't know, it seems kind of childish to me, but it is what it is. And again,
but we're adults saying this. If the reason why Jester might lose just because the audience is young enough to not understand how important it is that you have to be mature and in a business where you're making that much money.
I want to say this, Lo, too. I think that because, like, you highlight, the fact that a lot of those viewers are children, or they're in their teens or whatever. There is something about this younger generation, I feel like, that they feel like everyone in positions of power have to be, like, nice. Or they have, you know what I mean? Or they have to be, like, some upstanding citizen and treat everyone well. Dude, I'm telling you right now, man, the most powerful leaders in the world, or even like take a look at the industry of Hollywood, at movies, filmmaking. There are directors who are beyond petty with their actors, or with people that don't fucking do what they want to say, or they don't, movie studios who will go beyond anything to say, you know what, this guy, you're blackballed. We're not going to let you be in any other movie ever because you did this. And nobody bats an eye at that shit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, to me, it's like, what is this narrative that, like, these guys or YouTubers or whatever, they have to be this certain, like, dude, that guy, if it was me, I would have came out and said the exact thing that we're talking now. Dude, I'm not your dad. I'm not your mom. Like, if you want to go and smoke a ton of weed and drink a bunch of alcohol and do that to yourself, like, that's on you. That's not on me. That's on you. So I think that this narrative that, like, oh man, these guys in positions of power, that's just not how the world works, unfortunately. I wish it was. I wish everybody was nice, but that's just not how it works.
And also, I think that, I mean, even beyond, like, that much power, I don't think that people understand, like, the pressure of just having as much as Jester has going on for himself right now, the pressure that comes along with that.
Yeah.
So, like, just the idea that I have to now stop what I'm doing to just check up on you consistently. And what's crazy is I even just put you in these positions to achieve whatever you're achieving right now. The fact that I have to now stop what I'm doing to constantly check up on you because you made poor decisions. It's like I get it. They're friends. If something was happening to my friend, of course my approach would be different from someone else. But, like, I'm kind of confused to what you expect me to do as another individual. Like, as we're both adults here.
Well, wouldn't there be more to especially like if we just as example use you and Agent as a example, wouldn't and even with my friends, I think of like my best friends that like, oh man, like isn't there also an aspect of being more brutally honest with your friend and being more truthful and being like, yo, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I don't understand this narrative of like he like didn't really get what he wanted from Jesser, but then like in my opinion, like if I'm struggling with something, I am pretty brutally honest with my best friends about like, hey man, like I'm not fucking doing that, or I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, to bring out more conversation. So this aspect that Jesser talks about, like, dude, I can't read your mind. Like, why are you not like telling me these things? If you would have told me these things, we would have had the conversation about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. But dude, I appreciate you being on this podcast. We're over 2 hours, man. You just absolutely killed it. Thank you for coming on here. Whether it's, you know, the Nets and the Lakers and the bad opinion about the Lakers winning the championship, the too hype drama, everything going on, man. I appreciate you coming out and sharing your thoughts on the AimHigh Podcast. I appreciate it, man.
No problem, man. And much love, man. Thank you for having me on. Again, just check me out. And
yeah, please. Is there let everyone know what you got going on? Any links? That stuff is going to be posted in the description. But anything that you want to let anyone know about going on, please let them know.
Man, this upcoming year is going to be a very, very busy one for me. NBA channel still, Legend of Winning. Second channel where I might, if I get into streaming, might turn that into like a clip highlight channel. But more importantly, podcast channel, peer-to-peer podcast, where Agent and I sit down with rather consistent, have guests on there. We sit down and we talk. And then also Agent and I are also starting another channel. We already started this already at 50,000 called Playback. And I do think the content from that channel will bring in a different space and a different viewpoint on us. So I'm very excited about that right there. So Playback the channel, peer-to-peer, the podcast on all audio platforms, and of course on YouTube, and Legend of Winning on everywhere else, YouTube, my NBA channel, Twitter, and yeah, man, just keep updated, and on Twitch too, Legend of Winning on Twitch.
I love that. If you could leave the guests, the family barbecue, with one word or one phrase to end this podcast, what would you say?
Lakers in 5.